A brief history of ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy. In the heart of ancient Athens, something revolutionary took root, the idea that ordinary citizens could shape the fate of their city. Unlike the monarchies and empires that surrounded them, the Athenians developed a system where free male citizens could gather, debate, and vote on decisions that affected everyone. This was democracy in its rawest form, direct, participatory, and often chaotic. It wasn't perfect by any modern standard. Women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded. But the seeds planted there over 2,500 years ago would grow into one of humanity's most enduring political ideals. The Athenian assembly met on the Pnyx hill, overlooking the city, where citizens would speak passionately about war, trade, justice, and the rule of law. Great orators like Pericles inspired their peers with speeches that still echo through history. Their democracy was not about political parties or professional politicians. It was about the duty of the citizen to participate. Decisions could be overturned, policies debated endlessly, and yet, somehow, it worked. The people had power, and that was a revolutionary concept. What makes Athens' democracy so fascinating is how fragile and human it was. There were moments of brilliance, but also moments of mob rule. Still, from this imperfect experiment came the philosophical foundation for modern representative governments. Today, every time someone casts a vote, there's a small echo of that ancient Athenian voice on the Pnyx. Crossed Swords #2. The Persian Wars. Not long after democracy found its footing, Greece faced an existential threat. The Persian Empire, the largest in the known world, turned its eyes westward. For the Greek city-states, divided by rivalries and politics, the Persian invasion was a test of survival. The battles that followed, Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis, became the stuff of legend. Marathon proved that the Persians could be beaten. Thermopylae, where King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans held the pass, showed Greek courage, and Salamis, the naval battle that crushed the Persian fleet, secured Greece's independence. These wars were not only military struggles but also cultural ones. They pitted the disciplined, independent Greek city-states against a sprawling empire ruled by kings. When Athens and Sparta stood shoulder to shoulder against Persia, it wasn't just for territory, it was for their way of life. The victory at Salamis in 480 BCE didn't just save Greece. It preserved the idea of freedom and self-determination that would go on to inspire Western civilization. In the aftermath, Athens rose as a powerful force, its navy dominant and its confidence unmatched. The wars unified Greece briefly, but they also set the stage for internal rivalries that would soon tear it apart. 3. Theatre and drama. From war to art, the Greeks had an uncanny ability to turn every aspect of life into a reflection of the human spirit. Nowhere was this more evident than in their theatre. Born from religious festivals honoring Dionysus, Greek drama evolved into a powerful cultural force that explored fate, morality, and the gods themselves. Amphitheaters carved into hillsides could hold thousands, and audiences came not just for entertainment but for emotional and spiritual catharsis. Playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes became ancient celebrities. Their works, Oedipus Rex, Medea, Lysistrata, tackled issues of justice, love, pride, and even politics. Comedies mocked the powerful, tragedies dissected human flaws. The stories reminded audiences that no mortal, however mighty, could escape destiny. Through drama, Greeks confronted their fears and found meaning in suffering, a lesson that still resonates in modern storytelling. Greek theatre was more than performance, it was a mirror to society. The masks, the chorus, the open-air stage, all were designed to amplify human emotion. And through that art, the Greeks gave the world one of its greatest cultural legacies, the power of story. 4. Philosophy and the search for truth. Where art left questions, philosophy sought answers. In the streets of Athens, thinkers like Socrates challenged citizens to question everything, from justice and virtue to the nature of reality itself. His student Plato would later capture those conversations in his dialogues, exploring ideas that still shape philosophy today. And Aristotle, Plato's pupil, would go on to lay the foundations of logic, ethics, and science. For the Greeks, philosophy wasn't an academic pursuit, it was a way of life. To philosophise meant to love wisdom and seek truth through reason, observation, and debate. Schools like the Academy and the Lyceum became centres of learning that would influence civilizations for centuries. The very notion that truth could be discovered through rational thought, rather than divine decree, began here. From the moral philosophy of Socrates to the political theory of Plato's Republic, Greek thought shaped everything from Western education to modern governance. Philosophy gave humanity a new tool, the ability to question the world, and in doing so, to understand it. 5. The Olympic Games. Every 4 years, the Greeks set aside politics and war to honor Zeus through competition. The Olympic Games, held in Olympia, were more than just athletic contests. They were a celebration of human excellence and unity. City-states that might be at war 1 month would send their best athletes to compete side by side the next. Events included foot races, wrestling, chariot racing, and the brutal pankration, a no-holds-barred mix of boxing and wrestling. Victors weren't rewarded with gold or riches, but with olive wreaths and eternal glory. To win at Olympia was to achieve immortality in the eyes of your people. The Games also showcased the Greek ideal of arete, excellence in mind and body, the harmony of physical and moral virtue. The Olympics were a statement of what it meant to be Greek. They represented unity through rivalry, peace through competition, and respect for the gods through the celebration of human strength. And while centuries passed before the Games were revived, their spirit, of striving for greatness, remains alive today. 6. The city-states, polis system. Ancient Greece was not a single nation but a patchwork of independent city-states, or polis, each with its own government, culture, and values. Athens prized learning and democracy, Sparta valued discipline and war, Corinth thrived on trade, and Thebes stood as a military power in its own right. This diversity was both Greece's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. The polis was more than a city, it was a community of citizens bound by shared identity. To the Greeks, belonging to a polis was everything. It shaped one's duties, beliefs, and loyalties. These independent city-states fostered incredible innovation and individuality, but their constant rivalries often led to conflict. And yet, this system gave rise to extraordinary achievements. Out of competition came progress, in art, architecture, philosophy, and politics. The polis was the forge in which Western civilization was hammered into shape. But not all city-states were built the same. While Athens celebrated debate and beauty, one stood apart, a society built entirely for war. #7. Life in Sparta. Sparta was unlike any other place in the ancient world. Its citizens were warriors from birth, trained in the grueling agoge system that emphasized discipline, endurance, and loyalty to the state. Boys were taken from their families at 7 and molded into soldiers through years of relentless training. The result was a society feared and respected by all. Spartan life revolved around simplicity, strength, and obedience. Luxuries were discouraged, questions were few, and courage was everything. Women in Sparta held more power and respect than in most other Greek states. They managed households, owned land, and were expected to be strong mothers of warriors. The entire system existed to maintain a powerful military elite ready to defend their land. Yet, for all its rigidity, Sparta's focus created one of the most formidable armies in history. Their victory at Thermopylae, though ultimately a loss, became a symbol of defiance and courage that would inspire generations. The Spartans lived and died by their creed, to come back with their shield, or on it. 8. Greek art and pottery. If philosophy gave Greece its mind, then art gave it its soul. From intricate pottery to lifelike sculptures, the Greeks sought to capture not just appearance but essence, the perfection of form and the beauty of balance. Their artists were storytellers, their hands guided by both skill and belief. Every vase, every statue, told a story of gods, heroes, and the people who lived between myth and reality. Greek pottery wasn't mere decoration, it was documentation. Painted in black and red figures, these vessels depicted scenes from daily life, war, and mythology, snapshots of a world now long gone. Through them, historians today can trace Greek clothing, customs, and even humor. Sculptors, meanwhile, transformed marble and bronze into idealized human figures, neither divine nor mortal, but somewhere gloriously in between. Over time, their art evolved from rigid, stylized forms to fluid realism. By the classical period, Greek sculpture achieved what few others have since: movement captured in stillness. The grace of a discus thrower, the serenity of a goddess, all carved with a precision that continues to inspire artists over 2 millennia later. But for all their love of beauty, the Greeks also cared deeply about justice and order, ideas that shaped the foundations of Western law. Scales #9. Law and citizenship. In ancient Greece, the concept of law was more than a set of rules, it was the heartbeat of the polis. Justice wasn't handed down from a distant ruler but determined by the citizens themselves. Courtrooms were public spaces where hundreds of men might sit on a jury, hearing arguments shouted before them. It was messy, passionate, and profoundly human, democracy in action. Citizenship was both a privilege and a responsibility. Only freeborn men could participate fully in civic life, but the ideal of equality under the law began here. In Athens, Solon, and later Cleisthenes reformed the legal system, giving structure to what had been a tangled web of privilege and tradition. The Greeks believed deeply in accountability. Even their leaders could be exiled if they failed their city. Greek law set a precedent that echoed through Rome, the Enlightenment, and modern constitutions. The notion that laws, not rulers, govern society, that power must be bound by principle, is a legacy that began in the marble courtyards of ancient Athens. 10. Greek colonization and trade. Surrounded by sea and mountains, Greece was never a land of isolation. When their rocky soil could no longer sustain growing populations, the Greeks turned outward. They sailed across the Mediterranean, founding colonies from Asia Minor to Italy and even the distant coasts of Spain. These colonies were extensions of their homeland, carrying with them language, religion, and art. Trade flourished between these outposts and the mother cities. Olive oil, wine, and pottery were exchanged for grain, metals, and luxury goods. The Aegean became a web of commerce and culture, where ideas traveled as easily as goods. This constant exchange helped spread Greek identity far beyond its borders, turning the Mediterranean into a Greek-speaking world. Through colonization, Greece learned the art of adaptation, blending local traditions with their own. This openness to new ideas would later pave the way for the great cultural fusion of the Hellenistic age. But not all Greek achievements were measured in wealth or conquest. Some of their greatest minds turned their curiosity inward, asking how the world itself worked. 11. Greek science and medicine. To the Greeks, the universe was a puzzle waiting to be understood. They looked at the stars, the body, and the elements, searching for order and reason. Figures like Pythagoras, Hippocrates, and Archimedes turned observation into science. Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, believed that illness was not punishment from the gods but a natural imbalance within the body. His methods, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment, laid the foundation for modern medical practice. In geometry, Euclid built a logical framework that students still study today. Archimedes, the great inventor of Syracuse, discovered principles of buoyancy and mechanics that remain fundamental to physics. He was said to have shouted, "Eureka! I've found it!" after realizing how to measure volume using water displacement. Their discoveries weren't accidents of curiosity. They were the result of disciplined, systematic thought. Greek science was remarkable because it sought universal truths. Instead of explaining the world through myth, thinkers explained it through logic and mathematics. That shift, from divine will to natural law, was one of humanity's most important intellectual leaps. 12. Greek mythology. Yet, even as their thinkers sought logic, the Greeks never abandoned their myths. Their gods were not distant beings but reflections of humanity itself, proud, jealous, loving, and flawed. From the heights of Mount Olympus, Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and the others ruled over the fates of mortals below. Their stories were lessons wrapped in legend, shaping how the Greeks understood nature, morality, and destiny. Mythology explained what science could not. Why did the seasons change? Because Persephone descended into the underworld each winter. Why do we suffer? because of Prometheus's gift of fire and humanity's defiance of the gods. These tales gave meaning to the chaos of existence and connected the people to forces beyond their control. But myths weren't just religious, they were cultural DNA. Artists painted them, playwrights dramatized them, and poets immortalized them. Even today, phrases like Achilles' heel or Pandora's box remind us how deeply Greek mythology still lives within our language and imagination. 13. The Trojan War and Homer's epics. Among all their myths, one story rose above the rest, the tale of the Trojan War. Whether myth or memory, it was immortalized by a poet named Homer in two of the greatest works ever written, the Iliad and the Odyssey. These epics captured not just war and heroism but the raw humanity behind them: pride, love, loss, and the unending search for home. In the Iliad, Achilles rages against fate and mortality. In the Odyssey, Odysseus journeys across perilous seas, encountering monsters, gods, and temptation, all in the hope of returning to his family. These stories weren't just entertainment, they were moral lessons wrapped in adventure, shaping Greek identity for centuries. Through Homer's words, the Greeks learned what it meant to be heroic, not invincible, but courageous despite flaws. The heroes of Troy were mirrors to the people themselves, and their struggles, victories, and tragedies became timeless symbols of the human spirit. And while poets built their worlds with words, architects built them with stone, crafting structures that define the skyline of Greece and still inspire awe today. 14. Architecture and the Parthenon. Greek architecture was the art of precision made eternal. Every column, every angle, every proportion was designed with mathematical perfection. The Greeks believed that beauty lay in harmony, between structure and purpose, form and function. Their temples were not merely places of worship but physical expressions of divine order. The Parthenon, dedicated to Athena, stands as the pinnacle of this ideal. Built atop the Acropolis in Athens, it was a masterpiece of Doric design, its columns subtly curved to create the illusion of flawless straightness. Inside once stood a towering statue of Athena herself, symbolizing the power and pride of the Athenian people. Beyond temples, the Greeks pioneered public architecture, agoras, theaters, and gymnasiums that brought citizens together. These spaces weren't just functional, they embodied the Greek spirit of community and excellence. Even today, when we build courthouses, universities, or government halls with grand pillars and open facades, we echo the architectural genius of ancient Greece. 15. Inventions and engineering. The Greeks didn't just think deeply, they built brilliantly. Curiosity was their greatest tool, and necessity their greatest teacher. From everyday devices to groundbreaking concepts, Greek inventors pushed the boundaries of what was possible in their time. They created cranes to lift massive marble blocks, catapults to defend cities, and even early versions of alarm clocks and vending machines. One of their most fascinating inventions came from Hero of Alexandria, a steam-powered device known as the Aeolipile. Though it was little more than a novelty in his time, it represented the first known instance of steam propulsion, a spark of inspiration that wouldn't ignite again until the Industrial Revolution. Meanwhile, architects and engineers used geometry to construct massive theaters that carried a whisper across hundreds of feet without the aid of modern amplification. Their innovations weren't isolated marvels. They were built upon layers of logic, observation, and experimentation. The Greeks combined art with engineering, mathematics with architecture, and imagination with practicality. They taught the world that technology and creativity could coexist, and together, build civilizations that last. And while their machines moved stone and fire, another kind of construction was taking place, the building of minds through education and learning. 16. Education and learning. Education in ancient Greece was not just about memorizing facts, it was about shaping the soul. The Greeks believed that knowledge was the path to virtue, and that a well-educated citizen was essential for a strong city-state. Boys in Athens studied philosophy, rhetoric, music, and physical fitness, each discipline sharpening a different part of the mind and body. In contrast, Sparta's education was designed for war. There, children were trained to endure pain, fight bravely, and serve the state above all else. Yet even in this harsh environment, discipline and loyalty were seen as forms of wisdom. The Greeks understood that education was not one size fits all. It reflected a city's values, its fears, and its hopes. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle built entire schools devoted to knowledge. Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum became intellectual beacons, attracting students from across the ancient world. These schools didn't just produce thinkers, they shaped how we still think about thinking itself. 17. Language and literature. If education was the foundation of Greek culture, language was its voice. The Greek alphabet, adapted from the Phoenicians, gave rise to a written tradition that carried their stories, ideas, and discoveries across centuries. Their language was precise yet poetic, capable of expressing both deep emotion and rigorous logic, a balance that defined everything they created. Greek literature explored every corner of human experience: tragedy, comedy, history, philosophy, and poetry. Writers like Sophocles, Herodotus, and Hesiod crafted words that still resonate today. Sophocles' Oedipus Rex questioned fate and free will. Herodotus, often called the father of history, chronicled wars and wonders with curiosity rather than judgment. Even now, thousands of English words trace back to Greek roots: democracy, theatre, philosophy, logic, and cosmos. Their language didn't just describe the world, it shaped how we perceive it. Through their words, they gave us tools to question, reason, and dream. And then came a man who would take those dreams and carry them farther than anyone before him. 18. Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic Age. Born in Macedon, tutored by Aristotle, and destined for greatness, Alexander was the embodiment of Greek ambition. By the age of 30, he had conquered most of the known world, from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and as far as India. But his true legacy wasn't just in the battles he won, it was in the culture he spread. Everywhere Alexander went, Greek language, art, and philosophy followed. Cities he founded, like Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of learning, trade, and science. The blending of Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian cultures during his reign created what we now call the Hellenistic Age, a period of immense creativity and exchange. When Alexander died at just 32, his empire fractured, but his influence endured. Greek ideas continued to thrive for centuries, shaping art, politics, and thought throughout the ancient world. In many ways, Alexander didn't just build an empire, he built a civilization without borders. Church 19. Religion and daily life. For the Greeks, religion wasn't something practiced only in temples, it was woven into every moment of daily life. From morning prayers to the gods, to sacrifices before meals, to festivals that united entire cities, the divine was everywhere. Their gods were human-like in their flaws and desires, making them both relatable and revered. Temples like those dedicated to Zeus at Olympia or Apollo at Delphi were centers of worship and community. People traveled great distances to consult oracles, offer gifts, or seek favor in times of hardship. Festivals such as the Panathenea and Dionysia blended faith with art, sports, and celebration. Proof that religion, for the Greeks, was as much about living joyfully as it was about devotion. Yet their belief system was fluid, open to reinterpretation and influence. As Greek culture spread, their gods took on new forms and names, merging with local deities. This adaptability helped their mythology endure long after their temples fell silent. And even when the temples crumbled and the empires faded, the spirit of Greece did not disappear, it transformed. 20. The legacy of ancient Greece. More than 2,000 years later, the world still lives in the shadow of Greece. Their ideas on democracy, philosophy, art, and science form the bedrock of Western civilization. The architecture of their temples echoes in modern government buildings. Their questions about truth and virtue continue to guide our education systems and moral debates. We see their influence in language, in law, in literature, and even in the Olympics that still unite nations every 4 years. When we debate justice, we echo the voices of Athenian citizens. When we study the stars, we walk in the footsteps of their scientists. When we tell stories of heroes and gods, we speak their myths anew. Ancient Greece may have been a collection of small city-states on a rocky peninsula, but its spirit became something much larger, a civilization of ideas. Their pursuit of knowledge, beauty, and balance still challenges us to ask the same timeless question they once did. What does it mean to live a good life?